So far this year, I haven't been particularly enamored with most of the new films coming out. There's been some fun films, but there wasn't anything that I knew instantly was going to be one of my favorites of the year, which is kind of worrying considering we are halfway through the year now. But finally, I have found a film that has potential to not just be on a top 10 list, but to be my favorite of the year. This film is called You Hurt My Feelings. It's directed and written by Nicole Holofcener, who I think might be one of my favorite directors at this point. At least two of her previous films I absolutely loved, especially The Land of Steady Habits, which was a film with Ben Mendelsohn that was on Netflix a few years ago. She seems to specifically enjoy making films about a certain kind of upper middle class American. They're usually very family centered, often about the struggles of mature age relationships, about people who are usually quite well off, but in a way that still seems kind of realistic. There's very much a self-awareness about this to her films, I think, especially this one. So this stars Julia Louis-Dreyfus. She's an author and she wrote a memoir that was relatively successful, though people like to tell her that they think that it deserved to do better. She's now in the process of writing her new book, which is her first novel. She has a very supportive husband played by Tobias Menzies, who tells her that he thinks her book is great and she just needs to find the right publisher for it. Then one day when she and her sister are hanging out, which they do quite a lot in this film, they have such a lovely relationship. Both their husbands have gone sock shopping and they decide to, just for fun, surprise them in the store as they happen to be passing. Only they happen to overhear Tobias Menzies saying to the other husband that he doesn't actually like her novel and he doesn't know how to say it at this point because he just wanted to be supportive and so he pretended to like it. The whole film is about this way that we can hurt each other's feelings by thinking we're being supportive and thinking that to be supportive involves 100% positivity, and how that can actually be quite damaging to people who really trust and value your opinion. It's the kind of film I love where really nothing much happens at all. You just see these characters interacting with each other. It's very funny, of course, because Julia Louis-Dreyfus is hilarious and everyone else in it is equally as funny, I think. But it is very gentle and subtle and lulls you into these characters' problems because they're really not that significant at all, so you can kind of relax into it. And like I said, it has a self-awareness about the fact that these problems are not that important and that these people's lives are very comfortable, and is just sort of taking pleasure at poking a little bit of fun at people like this, while also acknowledging that our problems, however privileged, are very important to us as individuals. I find it so hard to describe why I like a film, because there's just something magical about watching a film that you love that is indescribable. It's just this feeling of watching something that fully appeals to your sensibilities. It's almost like my version of fantasy in a way, because I would absolutely love to live these characters' lives. Nicole Holofcener just has such a delicate touch, I think, with her script and her direction, and just contains so many smart observations of people and their interactions with each other. All the actors are so good, and Julia Louis-Dreyfus, it just feels like her and Nicole Holofcener have such a great relationship, clearly because she was in another of her films, Enough Said, which I think came out about 10 years ago. Nicole Holofcener's writing and the way she's written this character just so perfectly matches Julia Louis-Dreyfus's style of acting and her comedy style as well. I don't know if I've explained that well enough to show how good I think this film is, but I just had such a good time and I would highly recommend it. You Hurt My Feelings, by the way, is not actually out in cinemas in Australia until next Thursday on the 15th. The next two films are already out. The first one is The Unlikely Pilgrimage of Harold Fry. This is based on a book which I have not read and is about a British man called Harold Fry, who is played by Jim Broadbent. He and his wife Maureen, played by Penelope Wilton, live alone in some British suburb somewhere. They clearly have quite an ordinary kind of life, not anything particularly exciting is happening to them. And then Harold gets a letter from an old work colleague of his called Queenie. She says that she is ill with cancer and just wanted to write and sort of tell him that, I guess. He, for some reason, decides that he needs to walk to see Queenie right across the UK. I think he's approximately walking from like near Bristol up to Newcastle way, maybe even further than Bristol. And for some reason he thinks that this walk will encourage her to stay alive until he can go see her. This concept I just never felt was properly explained in this film. And I don't know whether it's explained better in the book, but I just didn't understand why he couldn't just like drive there or take a train. It seemed like he believed that the act of walking was going to keep her alive, but it just seemed nonsensical. Like, why would he think that? And even more bizarre is that no one around him seemed to be telling him this. Like, his wife is very disapproving of this thing that he's done, especially as he just leaves and doesn't actually tell her until later. And she tells him that she thinks the walk is dumb, but she doesn't tell him why not just get on a bus and go see her. So even from the beginning, I couldn't get on board with this film. People begin to find out about Harold, that he's doing this pilgrimage, and he gains a lot of followers and people get really excited when he comes to their town. And I just didn't believe in that either. I just think most people would think that it was dumb because it is a dumb thing to do. And I found that whole aspect of the plot especially unbelievable. Throughout the film, you learn about Harold and Maureen's son and how they had a troubled relationship with him. And so the film becomes this whole thing of Harold having to learn to forgive himself, to face the past in a way that he hasn't done before, and also about breaking out of the mundane life that the two of them were living together. The positives about this film is that I think it was shot really well. There is a lot of beautiful scenery in the film. I think the camera depicted the strain of the journey, but it did also capture a lot of the beauty of the landscape, which is something that Harold comes to appreciate as he goes along. But the concept was just something too ridiculous for me. I've always thought the idea of self-sacrifice for no particular reason was a really dumb thing. Obviously, with such good actors like Jim Broadbent, that part of the film is great. And if you can get on board with the premise of this film, you might enjoy it, but I could not. The last film I have to review is One Fine Morning. This is a French film by Mia Hansen-Love and stars Léa Seydoux as a woman who I guess has quite a lot going on. She is a single mum. Her husband died, I think, about a year ago. She strikes up a relationship with a friend of hers who also happens to be married with a child. In the meantime, her father is going through a form of dementia. She's finding the whole thing incredibly distressing, as you would, having to move her father out of his home and find a nursing home for him where he's going to be comfortable. This also means dismantling his home, which is full of all the books that he loved. And she feels like this is almost another way of having to say goodbye to her father, because his book collection is a representation of his personality. This is very much a sort of day in the lifestyle film. You just see Léa Seydoux interacting with various characters, family members, her lover, her daughter, her father, and how it's all affecting her emotionally in various ways. I've watched a few Mia Hansen-Love films and I've always given them 3 stars because I think they're really well made films, but I never connect with them emotionally, and this was pretty much the same with this one. Visually, I really love them. I feel like they're always so beautifully made and have a certain level of naturalism, but are also clearly very styled because everyone always wears very nice clothes and has apartments filled with books. But the mundanity which I can enjoy in other films, I find too mundane in her films, I think. The snippets of life we see are almost just too short. It never feels like the emotions are following through with each scene, so the whole film feels a little bit disjointed to me. The storyline around her father, I definitely found the more interesting part of the film because it is something that all adults have to go through generally, losing their parents in one way or another, and her father slowly being able to recognize her less and less is a pretty horrific thing to have to witness, and the various ways that all the characters react to his illness as well, to show that not everyone is going to react to that kind of tragedy in the same way. The romantic aspect of the film definitely let it down for me. I found it very boring. I did not see the appeal of this man at all, and personally I felt he was using her. If the film had been more about her family, I think I would have enjoyed it a lot more because there were some really delightful family scenes, and her relationship with her daughter was a really nice one as well. She works as a translator, and that includes live translating for like talks and things like that, and that was quite interesting to watch. If you enjoy films for sort of just the aesthetics and the vibes, I think you would enjoy this very much. But for me, I just found it a bit too plodding to really enjoy. Those are my 3 film reviews for this week. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!